Most people grow up believing dogs are smarter than wolves, and at first glance, the evidence seems obvious. Dogs obey commands, they respond to names, they read human emotions, they integrate into human homes and lifestyles, while wolves remain distant, wild, unpredictable, and untamed. So naturally, the conclusion feels simple. The animal that understands us must be the more intelligent one. But this is where the first illusion begins, because what we often label as intelligence is not raw cognition, it is compliance with human expectations, and anything that aligns easily with our world becomes automatically classified as smarter, not because it is objectively superior, but because it is easier to observe, easier to control, and easier to interpret. And this creates a hidden bias in how we measure animal intelligence. But intelligence in nature was never designed to be measured through human comfort. Intelligence is not about how well an animal fits into our environment. Intelligence is about how well it survives when nothing is structured, when nothing is given, and when nothing is explained. And the moment you shift the definition away from obedience toward survival, the comparison between wolves and dogs stops being simple and starts becoming deeply complex. But before we begin, we are Meme Dogs TV. Subscribe and let's begin. The dog's mind, built for human reality. Dogs are not simply intelligent in a general sense, they are intelligent in a highly specific direction. They are built around humans, shaped by thousands of years of domestication, where survival depended not on independence, but on cooperation with people. And this long evolutionary partnership rewired their cognitive priorities. Dogs became experts at reading human behavior, not just basic signals, but subtle emotional cues, facial expressions, tone shifts, posture, movement patterns, even micro-reactions. Dogs learn to predict what humans will do next before we fully act, and this creates a form of intelligence that is deeply social in nature. But this intelligence is not neutral, it is specialized. It is tuned to a single dominant system, the human world. And because of that specialization, dogs do not approach problems purely as isolated challenges. They approach problems through a relational lens, meaning they unconsciously assume that help, feedback, or guidance exists somewhere within their environment, even when it is absent. This is why dogs can appear extremely intelligent in training environments, yet behave differently when placed in fully independent, survival-based conditions, because their intelligence is partially externalized. It depends on interaction, structure, and reinforcement. Dependence without awareness. One of the most overlooked aspects of dog cognition appears only when you remove human presence completely. Because in isolation, dogs often behave differently, not in a dramatic way, but in subtle, repeated patterns. They hesitate more, they pause longer, they scan their surroundings not just for solutions, but for social cues, and most importantly, they frequently redirect attention outward, as if expecting instruction that never arrives. This is not confusion, it is expectation built into behavior over generations. Dogs were selected not for isolation intelligence, but for cooperative responsiveness. And over time, this created a mental framework where uncertainty is often resolved by seeking external input rather than internal problem construction. So when guidance is absent, the system does not break, it simply reverts to waiting behavior, a search for missing social structure rather than aggressive, independent solution building. The problem-solving divide. When wolves and dogs are placed in controlled problem-solving environments, the contrast becomes more visible, not because one is simply smarter, but because they are approaching the same problem with completely different mental architectures. Wolves tend to persist longer in solving unfamiliar tasks. They repeat attempts, they modify strategies, they explore variations, and they maintain focus on the problem itself, even without immediate reward. Dogs often engage quickly but shift attention sooner, especially when no clear feedback or guidance appears. And this does not mean lack of intelligence. It reflects a different cognitive expectation system, where persistence is often reinforced through interaction rather than internal drive alone. So, what appears as intelligence difference is actually a difference in behavioral persistence under uncertainty. The wolf mind, built for raw reality. Wolves evolved under completely different conditions where no human system existed, no predictable food supply, no structured protection, no guaranteed survival network. Every decision mattered because every mistake carried immediate consequence. And in such an environment, intelligence is not optional. It is survival itself. A wolf cannot afford hesitation. It cannot rely on instruction. It cannot assume help is coming. Every moment is shaped by uncertainty, and that forces the brain to operate in a constant state of environmental analysis, prediction, and rapid decision-making. Wolves must read terrain, track movement, anticipate prey behavior, coordinate with pack members, and adjust instantly when conditions change. And all of this happens without central control, without spoken instruction, and without external reinforcement. This builds a different kind of intelligence, one that is internally generated rather than externally guided. The problem-solving divide. When wolves and dogs are placed in controlled problem-solving environments, the contrast becomes more visible, not because one is simply smarter, but because they are approaching the same problem with completely different mental architectures. Wolves tend to persist longer in solving unfamiliar tasks. They repeat attempts, they modify strategies, they explore variations, and they maintain focus on the problem itself, even without immediate reward. Dogs often engage quickly but shift attention sooner, especially when no clear feedback or guidance appears. And this does not mean lack of intelligence. It reflects a different cognitive expectation system, where persistence is often reinforced through interaction rather than internal drive alone. So, what appears as intelligence difference is actually a difference in behavioral persistence under uncertainty. Autonomy versus cooperation. This is where the real distinction emerges. Dogs are cooperative processors. Their intelligence is distributed across interaction with humans. Wolves are autonomous processors. Their intelligence is contained within themselves. Autonomy forces a different mental structure because every decision must originate internally. There is no fallback, no external correction, no guided repetition, and no learned reliance on instruction. This produces a mindset that is constantly self-testing, self-adjusting, and self-correcting in real time. And while it may not appear as trainable intelligence, it is a form of raw adaptive cognition shaped entirely by environmental pressure. The cost of comfort. Comfort is one of the most powerful hidden forces in intelligence development. Dogs live in controlled environments where food is provided, threats are minimized, mistakes are corrected, and survival pressure is significantly reduced. This allows emotional intelligence, social bonding, and communication skills to flourish, but it also reduces the need for extreme independent problem solving. Wolves exist in the opposite reality, where every decision has consequence, where failure can mean injury, starvation, or death, and where there is no structured correction system. This pressure does not make wolves better, it makes them different. It forces constant adaptation at a survival level. Strategic intelligence in the wild. In natural hunts, wolves demonstrate coordination that is not based on spoken command, but on shared perception. They read movement, spacing, timing, and behavior in real time. Each individual wolf acts independently, but aligns with the group dynamically. This creates a system that is fluid, adaptive, and highly efficient, not because it is planned, but because it is continuously adjusted through observation and response. This type of intelligence is closer to real-time strategy than obedience. It is distributed decision-making under extreme pressure. The human advantage. Dogs evolved alongside humans, and this relationship reshaped their intelligence trajectory. Humans removed much of the environmental unpredictability that shapes survival-based cognition and replaced it with structured guidance, reinforcement, and predictable systems. This made dogs extremely effective communicators and companions, but reduced the necessity for self-directed survival intelligence. Wolves remained outside this system and therefore retained cognitive patterns shaped entirely by natural pressure rather than human control. Redefining intelligence. So when people ask who is smarter between wolves and dogs, they are unknowingly comparing two different types of intelligence systems. One designed for cooperation within a structured environment, and one designed for survival within an unstructured environment. The confusion comes from using a single definition for intelligence, when in reality, intelligence is multidimensional. The final truth. If intelligence means learning commands, bonding with humans, and adapting socially within structured environments, then dogs clearly dominate that category without question. But if intelligence means surviving independently, solving unfamiliar problems, adapting under pressure, and functioning without guidance, then wolves operate under a form of intelligence that is rarely required of domestic dogs. And when all structure is removed, when there are no commands, no safety nets, no human presence, and no external guidance, intelligence stops being about obedience and becomes about raw, autonomous action under pressure. And in that condition, the advantage shifts away from the one that listens and toward the one that thinks and acts entirely on its own. And that is where wolves remain unmatched in their natural world.